There we go.
Be more authentic anyway. Be like gorilla here. All right, here we go.
Yeah, perfect. We're getting to it. Well, I appreciate it again. Thank you for coming. Thank you for talking to me. And let's maybe give you a chance to kind of explain what it is that your business does and how it helps your clients.
Hey Tony, thanks for having me on. So for the
Sure.
audience, my name is Reuben Abootorabi. I'm the CEO and founder of the Austin Agency. We are a creative growth lab. We work with really large companies when they want to operate and grow at startup speed using their enterprise resources. We have a methodology called disruption as a service, and we come in and we run revenue red teams and revenue ghost teams to either disrupt what would look like to disrupt yourself and find opportunities before your competition does, disrupt the marketplace, and basically just help these organizations accelerate any growth or innovation initiative by 1 to 4 quarters. So we're a hands-on organization. We're a bunch of former hunters. We used to hunt deals and hunt business for our clients all over the world. We used to take our clients in the biggest companies in the world. We still do. But now we just packaged a whole methodology around controlled disruption and helping these organizations, act and think like startups, helping these corporate leaders act and think like startups, which is really important right now because things are moving so fast. And to have the opportunity to take projects outside the normal bureaucracy that a lot of these organizations deal with, run them quickly, figure out what to do next, get them shovel ready, energize their teams, is a nice add-on to a Fortune 2000 company.
Nice. How do you feel like like how is it that you're able to make large companies act like small companies?
Well, we bring a pretty aggressive mentality into it. We have a different relationship to speed than a lot of them do, and that's understandable in the sense that they operate, obviously in these large organizations, things take their time. We can operate outside those constraints. And so because we're entrepreneurs ourselves and I, started the company, we go find the decision makers in the target market. We run shark tanks. Teams can pitch a concept or an idea or a message or a strategy on the spot, receive feedback, make pivots, make adjustments, and come out of that session ready to take action. And that's the biggest thing. It's these aren't reports per se that you get. You get to pressure test your concept, your strategy, your messaging, your idea in the marketplace in real time with decision makers from your target market and make decisions accordingly. And that's incredibly energizing for all concerned.
Yeah, makes sense. You're from Norway originally, correct?
Yeah, I'm like the funkiest looking Norwegian you'll ever bump into.
Yeah. Um, I was wondering if you could kind of speak to, well, when was it that you came from Norway and what were some of those culture changes?
Sure, no, I left Norway in 1996. I was 19 years old. I came to attend the University of Oregon. The first year was really tough. There was a lot of culture shock. And Oregon is beautiful. It's green. There's a reason it's green. It rains all the time. And
Hmm.
so I had to get used to the climate, even though Western Norway rains a ton as well. I had to get used to the climate. I had to get used to a new culture. It took about a year or so to get climatized, for lack of a better term. And after that, I never looked back. I love the US. I always have. This is home. I'm
Yeah.
in LA primarily these days, but travel quite a bit, especially in California, and love the West Coast. So, we're coming up on the 4th of July as an immigrant in this country. It's a special holiday for me. I'm just really grateful to add my voice to this mosaic called the United States of America. Very grateful to be an American.
I imagine that's a big change from Norway to Oregon. When did you move to LA?
I moved to LA back in October. I've been in Texas for many, many years. I've been in Austin, Texas for over 16 years and felt led to head out west. I spent
Yeah.
10 months in San Francisco and then came down to LA in October.
I feel like travel is a really big, like, not just travel, but experiencing different cultures and seeing how other things work completely outside of your normal realm. And if you ask anybody, not anybody, most people, what their life goals is and where they want to go towards what their goal is for the rest of their life, a lot of people will tell you, I want to travel, whether it's during their career or when the career is over. What do you think the value is of travel and experiencing different cultures?
I think what the travel represents for me is freedom, right? I want to have that sense of freedom.
Yeah.
And so long car drives are like incredible. I remember a few years back, I drove 11 states, 4,100 miles in like 9 days. It was just driving. It was just seeing. It was a sense of freedom. That's incredibly important. Oh, I think in today's global economy, being able to relate to different cultures, understand, what them in their own, home turf, so to speak, how they think, what makes them tick, what their hopes and aspirations are if you want to be in business is incredibly important. Just as a humanitarian, right? The planet is smaller and how do we get along and how do we collaborate and co-create mutual success and prosperity. So I think travel is super important. I know a lot of executives struggled at the beginning of COVID. You know, they were in high pressure jobs, getting paid really, really well, traveling the world, Dubai one day, Paris the next. And all of a sudden that was gone. And they were at
Hmm.
home with their families. And it was a real hard adjustment for a lot of executives to make. It led to a lot of depression amongst some of the leaders out there because they weren't used to it. I mean, they're used to these go-go lives, and the whole world shuts down. What I mean, what an incredible cultural phenomenon! The whole world shuts down at the same time. So I think travel is important, but it can also be escapism. So I think there's times when you have to look at your own life and saying, am I trying to pull a geographic here? Am I just moving for the sake of moving? You know, what am I avoiding something? So I think travel is a beautiful addition to a well-balanced life.
Yeah, and just change in general, and to your point, freedom. I feel like if you're just staying in the same place doing the same things, that's a pretty easy way to be depressed.
Yeah, and probably pretty dangerous as well, right? Because you can become so insulated. You can become far too insulated. So I think it's important to have. I have lots of friends too from many different backgrounds. I like people that are different than me. I like people with different perspectives. Heck, we don't even agree. I've got friends on different ends of political spectrum, different ends on faith spectrum, different ends on social outlooks, and I like it. I think it's interesting to have friends with different opinions and how do they formulate those opinions? Where do they come from? I haven't walked in my own their shoes. I think it's just interesting. We don't always have to agree, but I think that's where some of the best ideas come from. A little bit of that. I'm going to use this term loosely, Tony. Creative tension. You know, there's a little bit
Mhm.
of like, hey, we just don't see the world differently. We don't see the world the same. There might be 20 or 30% of our perspective that's different, but can we sit and talk and share ideas? And I found that to be incredibly energizing and interesting.
Yeah, I think one of the best things you can do when you're talking to people who are giving you different ideas you've never heard before is to consider like, okay, here's an idea that I've never seen before. What is the strongest argument on the opposite side of that thought? And then you can kind of make decisions from yourself that way.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's certainly, what's the polar opposite? What would it look like if we did it completely differently? Keeping your mind elastic, I think, is incredibly important. That's why I think like reading and traveling and interesting conversations. One of my favorite quotes is the conversation is the relationship. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. If you're having great conversations with someone, you're probably in a great relationship. If you're not, you may not be. So I think great
Yeah.
conversations where we don't always have to agree. I think this whole idea that we have to uniformly agree on everything is dangerous. I think it's interesting to say, hey, we just don't share the same perspectives, but can we find common ground? Because in business and in life in general, I think some of the best ideas come from meeting in the middle or some of that creative tension that elevates it. Okay, you have your opinion, you're on one side, I'm on another side. Can we take it somewhere different? Can we take it somewhere together into a better place? And I think that's interesting. Like I will never have a political conversation. I'm so not interested in politics. But I do find policy conversations every now and then interesting. If you're dealing with people that are generally are, like you describe, open-minded and are truly seeking truth, then a good policy discussion could be really interesting. But I'm not interested in, for example, politics. That this you immediately you've had billions of dollars already framed to frame an argument or frame a position. There's not a lot of room for thinking there anymore.
Where do you think that comes from, the idea that we all have to agree?
Oh, I think it's safety. I think somehow there's probably around fear and safety that if we all agree that there's probably a high degree of safety or we feel better or feel safer and that sort of thing. And I think that's and I also think that um I I don't know if we the technology boom in the last 20 years has been amazing in many ways, but I wonder if we lost a little bit of that human touch. It's so easy just to be a paper tiger, right? It's so easy just to spout off radical opinions or aggressive opinions via social media or whatnot that you would never say to somebody into their face, right? You'd never say that. I had a friend
Yeah.
of mine, he said, I kind of wish we had the days of duels back. Now, I mean, he's being tongue in cheek, obviously, but there are consequences to what you say, right? There are consequences to your actions. And that's social media is just, it removes a lot of that and removes some of those natural, maybe respect and honor. And I think respect and honor is important in having a civilized society.
Yeah. No, I agree. I remember that makes me think of something that I saw where it was it was this guy who's on Twitter, he's watching football and the kicker missed a kick. And he immediately goes on Twitter and he starts talking about how bad the kicker is and how easy that job is and he can't do it. And then they went to hit that guy's house with a camera and they were like, "All right, let's see if you can do it." And he kicked the ball like 5 yards.
Right. Yeah,
Um,
exactly. Yeah. Not
but
not
it's
all,
so easy to be a keyboard warrior.
well, not all opinions are equal, and not all truth is equal, quote unquote, right? At different levels of degrees. And I think, yeah, that's 100%. I mean, I respect people that are in the ring with opinions. I mean, that takes guts today to have an opinion. It takes guts to put yourself out there. So I respect that. It's not new to our country, by the way. I read a book about Abraham Lincoln and the election of 1860 and the elections in the 19th century. They were pretty wild too. I mean, there was, so we've always had a wild system, but I think there's something about having to suit up and show up and state your opinion in front of other people, eyeball to eyeball. That's still pretty valuable.
Yeah. There's a couple ideas that seemed when I was looking to be pretty important to your company, and these were the concepts of phantom competitor and red teaming. I was wondering if you could share a little bit about those and how they work and what they are.
So phantom competitor is something that kind of came to me one day because I was thinking about like what would it look like to drive true disruption. Is there a way to disrupt the disruptors, right? If you're in a big company, you're perpetually living in some sort of fear that an unknown competitor, it's not so much a known competitor, you have a sense of what they're up to. It's an unknown, as they call them contender brands, shows up out of nowhere. And in less than a year, this wreaks havoc on you and your marketplace and so forth and so on. And if you think about it, Tony, it's not really a fair fight because you have different metrics for success. Say a publicly traded Fortune 500 company about profitability and growth and stability. If you are an aggressive early stage a contender brand, you may not even care about profitability, right? You're just trying to raise your next round. And so you're just trying to drive growth at any cost. It may not even be at the time a viable business model, but you're so well funded and you have so much rocket fuel that you can just keep on disrupting and creating havoc. So the whole idea was, could we take a team, a red team, or when it comes to disruption as a skill set, or disruption is more of a ghost team. Could we take a team and say, okay, if we were a competitor, how would we disrupt ourselves? I mean, talk about the ultimate outside in thinking, right? Like we were a competitor and we had $100 million. How would we disrupt ourselves? What would that look like? Where would our weaknesses be? And then you can turn those weaknesses into opportunities before a third party or competitor beats you to the punch. That's where the whole disruption uh, as a service and disruption as a skill set came from. Red teams. Now, I often would run, I would run those type of exercises, and we bring in interesting people. We bring in really interesting executives who've had phenomenal careers to also be part of that effort. Now, a red team is an internal team. Hey, let's solve a problem internally. And red teaming came from the military, I believe, originally. We're like, hey, we're on a base. If we were the enemy, how would we attack our own base? So again, it's the concept of like, if we were an outside force, how would we go after ourselves? So is that making sense?
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Do you feel like those are the main things the main philosophy that you're moving forward with?
Yeah, amongst other things. I mean, I think the intangible that we offer the marketplace is hope and courage. I want to see ordinary people do extraordinary things. I think that these companies are filled with incredibly smart, dynamic, talented people, talented leaders who can see the play. They just can't get there fast enough. It just takes too long to move, or there's too much bureaucracy. And even from the top up to the top down, I think people are frustrated with the lack of speed and agility and integration in these large organizations. You also have to bear in mind, a lot of these organizations are built on acquisitions that have gone, well or not so well. So how have these acquisitions been integrated into the overall machinery that is the company? So to give people an opportunity to say, look, no more reorgs. We don't have to necessarily do a reorg right now. We're just going to take a problem, an actual problem. We're going to find a high-level sponsor, like a C-level executive, and we're going to get this solved in half a quarter. We're going to take it offsite and get it solved in half a quarter, and then have something we can take action on and create momentum. Momentum is key in anything in life. I mean, I don't know about you, but the times I felt the most frustrated in my life is the times I felt stuck,
Hmm.
and it's a corporate phenomenon. By the way, it can also be a phenomenon for an early stage company. They can feel stuck as well. Hey, we got a great concept. Why are we not gaining traction? So this idea of momentum, and I think that gives people hope. And I think that as leaders in today's economy, we have to be hope-driven leaders. And hope doesn't mean optimism. I mean, I'm not talking about optimism or pessimism. To me, those are default settings. I'm talking about hope. A hopeful leader could look any situation in the eye, see it for what it is, but choose to believe that there is a solution for it and we're going to rise above it and we're going to come out stronger. That to me is a hopeful leader. We need more hopeful leaders because I don't think the shocks are over yet. I don't think the shocks are over yet. I think there's still more shocks to come. And so creating a culture where like, hey, when these problems come, how do we quickly turn them into opportunities? And so we're not afraid of the future anymore. We know we have teams that, I can lean on my people. I know that whatever comes our way, we can handle it. And I think that's what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for perfect.
Sorry, could you repeat the last part?
Yeah, where did I lose you?
Just like maybe 15 seconds before you finish talking.
Yeah, so I think, Tony, like what's important right now is that we have hope. Hope isn't. Let me start again.
Sure.
I think what's going to separate great leaders from good leaders in the years ahead is the ability to not only to sustain and generate hope, to project hope. I don't think the shocks are over yet. I think we're in for a few more shocks in the next decade or two, and being able to say, you know what, we can face them head on. We don't have to deny reality. We can see them for what they are, but we choose to believe that we're going to come out of this stronger with better solutions and more profitability. We're going to take these problems, we're going to turn them into opportunities, and that's what hope is. It's not about optimism or pessimism. It's about leaders who can say, you know what, we're going to build teams that we know we can rely on, and together we will figure it out. So whatever comes our way, we don't have to fear it. We don't have to fear it. We can find a way to take advantage of it, and we can find a way to grow through it and build stronger companies, stronger people, more profitable companies. And I think that's actually a good thing for the ecosystem right now. I think there was too much easy money out there, if I'm being honest with you. And I think it's good for the ecosystem to have a little bit of a discipline, a little bit of a contraction, so that folks can really it'll lead to a different type of leader, both in big companies and entrepreneurs.
So do you feel like a big part of what you're doing is coaching the CEOs, the leaders of these companies to find that hope and keep that hope through momentum?
It's not so much the CEOs. We certainly engage with C-level executives, but it's more. I find middle management a really interesting field. Like when you look at senior managers and directors, because if you
Mm.
think about it, that's where most of the execution of anything happens in a company.
Boots on
You
the
know,
ground.
yeah, absolutely. You're going to win or lose your battles at the senior manager or director level. You got a lot of smart people at C-level, C-suite. They're coming up with really good plans, but if they can't translate that into something that motivates the troops, they have input in how to execute it. They have input in the plans and designs, and they have a say in how this actually moves forward. You're going to lose that war and you're going to lose that battle, and that's a dangerous place to be. When you need senior managers and directors, they run teams. They know what's happening on the ground. They can see the opportunities. They bring a level of realism that's really critically important when you're looking to execute big strategic initiatives and transformation.
You also mentioned that you feel like the shocks aren't over yet. What makes you think that, and what do you think that looks like?
I'm a student of history. I have a near photographic memory when it comes to history. Maybe I should have been a history professor, not in the business. That's something that my life took. Maybe one day, maybe I'll be 65 and teaching at some college campus
Plenty of
somewhere.
time.
Plenty of time. But I'm just looking at the world reminds me a lot of where it was about 100 so years ago. We're seeing the rise of totalitarian regimes in a way that we haven't seen in quite some time. They used to call them fascist regimes. We call them totalitarian, authoritarian regimes right now. We're seeing a lot of economic instability. We're seeing a lot of fragility in the housing market. So I just think we have some indication it could be a perfect storm coming, or a series of shocks coming to housing markets, the economy, currency, and certainly in the geopolitical scene. I mean, we have a war going on in Ukraine. There's more geopolitical tensions. They affect supply chain, logistics. We're also interconnected these days. That I think that we're in the age now, the black swan, for lack of a better term. Crises that we can't quite predict. So I think from an environmental condition, it sure feels like a really charged environment. It feels like we're ready for a couple of thunderstorms heading our way.
Mhm.
When they hit, we don't know. It's like an earthquake, right? I live in Southern California. Earthquake. When they hit, we don't quite know. But are they going to hit? Yeah, I think so. I think so.
Fair. Do you think that'll happen within the next 5 to 10 years?
Oh, sooner than that.
Yeah.
Sooner. I mean, look at the last 6 or 7 years. I mean, we've had Brexit, which was not predicted to take place, right? They didn't think that the Brexit move would win. It did. So Britain's now out of the EU. Trump got elected the president. The pundits did not see that coming.
Hmm.
We've had a global pandemic. We have a war in Ukraine. I mean, I'm just touching on highlights here, not to mention all the sub stories underneath that. So yeah, I do, and I think we're running and gunning so fast that inevitably we're bound to have some more unforeseen crises come our way. And that's why it's so important right now to have leaders who can embrace a crisis, leaders who aren't afraid of it, leaders who have the skill sets and the speed and the integration, take advantage of these type of opportunities. And I think it's great. We have a nation of entrepreneurs, and that's fantastic, and we need that. But we also need the big guys. We need the whole ecosystem to thrive and do well. Because people say, well, we want to create a nation of entrepreneurs. Look, I'm an entrepreneur. Do you know how? You know what it does to your to your emotions and to your stress levels? I don't think most people are set up for that. So we need a little bit of
Yeah.
everything. Right. We need entrepreneurs, intrapreneurs, change leaders in every facet of the economy. So we need every structure out there right now in order to succeed and win.
What do you think is the best way to coach people to be able to ride that roller coaster and stay steady through the storm, especially through adversity?
I think the best way to coach anyone at any time, in my opinion, is to speak identity over them. You look into what their strengths are. You don't deny it, but you just speak identity. You keep speaking into their strength because whatever you focus on grows. So if I'm judging someone constantly, or I'm under judgment, that dies, right? Something in that relationship will die. But if I see somebody's strengths and I just keep speaking, and I'm not talking about this, a hope that dope stuck on hope. I'm not just talking about happy talk. But if I see
Mm,
that you're an incredible motivator, or people look up to you, and I keep calling out your strengths, I keep highlighting to your strength, I keep showing you your strength and speaking that identity, that's what's going to grow. And so I think as leaders, having the opportunity to look at people's strength. And the other one is to give people a perspective or an opportunity to be really honest with themselves about what their weaknesses are. Because if you don't have that, how are you going to build dream teams? If you think that you can do everything and you're this rock star at everything, or you like to believe that, then how do you supplement with people that can be strong where you're weak? So I think it's really important to help people understand, hey, here are two to three of your core strengths. We're going to focus most of our time on these so you can see exponential growth in
mm,
leadership and in your career. And the rest, we're going to teach you strategies on how to supplement so you can build teams around you with people that do really well where you don't, and find ways to win that way.
yeah, that's fair. It's speak identity. I haven't heard it put that way before. I'm curious what I want to kind of go back to before you started the company, and I want to know like what did life look like right before you had started this company, and what motivated you to start it?
I would love to tell you there was a big grand plan. There wasn't. I'd just gone through a
Mm,
divorce. I had to unwind the business. I didn't know what I was doing with my career. So at 35, I kind of had an awakening in my life. It was like, okay, I mean, but I had one sense I had to take radical responsibility. It was one of those moments where it's like, you can't blame anyone else. I'm responsible for everything that happens to me. Even if I didn't cause it, I'm still responsible for everything that happens for me. And how do I turn that into an opportunity? So I was in between careers and in between industries, as a matter of fact. And I was just thinking, one little interesting technology company after another said, you've got some experience in working with large organizations. Maybe you can help us. It became like the David versus Goliath story. I just kind of helped a lot of small to medium sized, brilliant technology companies enter the world of the Fortune 2000 at the director or VP level. And then a business partner and I took it to the next level. So that's how the agency started. It wasn't a grand plan. It was just one step after another.
so they started coming to you in the beginning.
In the beginning, yeah, I just like it was like friends, fools, and family. It was just whoever whoever could find me. And then I met some people, and then we started having some success, and word got out that we could help them, and then we built a global clientele, and went from there. But in 2017, 18, I started to pivot the business model. I really began to feel like, hey, what can we do with the big companies? How can we help them win? How can we help them operate at speeds and integration and efficiencies that they've never seen before, and they may not even think is possible. And that's how we started moving towards the ghost teams and disruptions of skill set and disruptions of service, and some of the methodologies that we built out based on our experience of being hunters for years and how to operate in the marketplace very quickly and very efficient.
Did you start it by yourself, or did you have partners as well?
Started with myself initially, then I had a partner for 4 years, great guy. He decided to move on. I bought him out and I continued on the journey myself.
Oh, okay. And right now you're the sole owner.
Yes.
Beautiful. You worked with a lot of different companies of different shapes and sizes. What would you say are some of your favorite industries to work with, or types of companies to work with, and why?
I like personalities. I like visionary leaders who are open-minded, can face reality, have a sense of hunger, have a sense of frustration, frustration, we call it the gift of desperation. Hey,
Hmm.
we need to make some change. Like you said, change is not always easy. And I think the human nature is to avoid it as much as possible if given up to our own proclivities. So I like leaders that, hey, I want to do something big. I need help. We want to move fast. I want to energize my team. I want them to have experiences that they didn't think were possible. Those are the type of organizations, the type of leaders that I'd like to work with. They want to make a dent in the universe. They realize they probably won't be able to do it on their own. They want to true partnership program in an organization that can help get them there faster and build a skill set that gives them a competitive edge and advantage. And those are the type of organizations that type of leaders that I like to work with. I also like traditional companies, like manufacturing companies who are making transitions into technology. I mean, everyone's a technology company these days, right? But
Mm.
hey, 100-year-old company, what does it look like to fast transition? How do we reinvent ourselves? Those type of organizations are also super important. But I don't discriminate. I like tech companies. It's just what's the problem you're trying to solve? Why are you trying to solve it? And who am I working with? Those are kind of the three
Yeah.
criteria. And I'd say another thing, which is more intangible, it's more of a gut feel than necessarily a science. How hungry is the person? How hungry is the person? Do they really want to change? Are they willing to make the sacrifices? What's driving the need for that change? How influential are they? It's great. You want to make this change. Can you get the backing of your organization? Do you have the budgets for it? Can you have is the organization backing you to cut through red tape when it's needed? So there are other things we look for as well, and I look for as well when assessing a potential partnership.
Seems like change is a really big, it's a concept that keeps coming up. It seems like it's like the foundation of what we're looking for and how we can improve. How are you able to strategize telling people their weaknesses in a way that they won't be offended by, or are you working with people who are open to it and excited to hear those things?
Well, I think you get a little bit of both, but I'm not the one who tells them about their weaknesses. I just get them ready, and the decision makers in the target market are the ones who point out and give them raw feedback. And I think
Mm.
that's really important because at the end of the day, that's really the only vote that counts, right? I mean, who's writing the check? I mean, nobody really writes checks anymore. I don't think they do anyway, but who is proverbially,
I don't.
you're exactly right. Who is writing the check, right? That they have the final vote. They get to choose. They get to decide who they want to move forward with, who they want to partner with, whose solution they want to buy. And so when you get it from the decision makers themselves in the target market as being the judge or the umpire, that cuts through a lot of noise. That cuts through a lot of arguments around people thinking they have facts when really what they have is informed opinion. And so when you get a cross-functional team and they're hearing it from the marketplace, directly from the marketplace, and you can record those sessions and you can play them to other leaders in the company, it just helps to unify and galvanize an organization in a way that's really hard to do if you're just having internal turf wars or fights. And I'm
Mm.
not looking to be a consultant in the traditional sense. I'm not anti-consultant. I think there's a lot of great consultants out there, really smart people helping a lot of organizations. Hear me, that's not what I'm saying. That's not what my business is. Now, I also try to lead by example, attraction, not promotion. I'm my own little guinea pig here. I'm the one doing my own little growth labbing on myself or growth hacking on myself a lot. So people also ask me about me and some of the things I do, and I'm happy to share, the areas of change that I'm working on.
You said attraction, not promotion. What do you mean by that?
Well, you know how annoying it is when somebody just wants to preach to you. They read the latest book and they want to shove it down your throat and preach to you about what. And it's like, hey man, live your life a certain way that people find attractive. Results are attractive. How you lead can be attractive. So if the way you're leading or the way you're going about your life is attractive, other people will find you and they'll ask you, what are you doing? What are you doing differently? How did you make this happen? And I think that's to me, an interesting way of going about living life.
Interesting. You are in an interesting position in that you are problem solving for a living on a day-to-day basis. All you're doing is solving problems and seeing how we can improve. What would you say is the most difficult challenge that you faced either in your company or in one of the companies that you're helping?
I think change can be fatiguing. I think problem solving can feel frustrating at times, especially if you feel stuck. Especially if you feel like you have a sense that there's a problem, but you can't quite put your finger on it.
Hmm.
It feels very elusive. I think those things can be very, very frustrating for people. There's a saying, clarity equals energy. When you get clarity in something, and certainly in my life, you feel energized. You feel, you can run 100 miles again. So I think that getting people out of the problem and into the solution, getting them unstuck is probably where there's the most reward, but also can be the most frustrating and taxing on any relationship.
Fair. You said clarity equals energy. That's interesting. I haven't heard that before. I actually had another question that I was going to ask you was, what do you feel like gives you the most energy?
For me personally, progress. I feel like I'm making progress in my life. When I feel like I'm living an authentic life, making progress is probably what gives me the most energy. When I solve problems, it gives me the most energy. Building new relationships with people gives me energy. Travel gives me energy. A good book gives me energy. I actually cut out caffeine recently because I felt like it was a crutch. I was getting that initial little bump, but I felt it was a crutch. I felt like I was getting a little off and zany. and I
Hmm.
wanted to experiment with different ways of getting energized and keeping my energy levels high. So great conversations always energize me. A great conversation with somebody who's interesting, wanting to make a dent in the universe, putting themselves out there, taking risks, being courageous, inspiring, and energizing.
Like new paths that come naturally, not necessarily forced change, but natural,
Yeah.
organic change.
And also when you see people that didn't think they could do something and they do something that's so beyond anything they thought they could, ask, dream, or imagine is incredibly rewarding and incredibly energizing for myself as well, right? When I push through a boundary or limit in my life that I never thought I could, that's an incredibly energizing feeling.
Hmm. Can you give me an example of a time when you really noticed a big change there?
In my own life,
Yeah.
yeah, I lost 100 pounds. I never thought I could break that
Wow.
barrier. I lost 100 pounds and kept it off by the grace of God. And I did so in community, and it was wonderful. And I never thought I could. I remember being at 285, and I remember thinking to myself, if I could just cut a deal with God and take a pill and land at 260, that I would take 260. I would have given, that would have been a sweetheart of a deal. And I weighed in the other day at 195. So like, it's incredible when you can see that that's actually possible, that you can have
Yeah.
that kind of change in your life. Yeah.
How were you able to do that? Was it mainly diet or exercise? I know people do both.
I worked a 12-step program for people with food compulsion issues. So it was spiritual, and then it was certainly in the diet side and the food program, working with a sponsor, and then it was also a little bit of exercise, but not too much. I exercise because I enjoy it, but I didn't have to run 50 miles a day to shed the weight. The weight actually came off real effortlessly.
You said a big part of it was emotional.
Oh, sure. Spiritual and emotional. Yeah. I mean, a lot of the
Wow.
reasons that somebody overeats or somebody is packing on extra weight is because there is some pain underneath that, right? There's some feelings we don't want to feel. I mean, our whole society is built on not feeling feelings in some ways, right? You don't want to feel a
Yeah.
feeling. You don't want a feeling, have a cup of coffee. You don't want a feeling, have some alcohol. You don't want a feeling, do X, Y, and Z. I mean, we're very good at not feeling our feelings and feeling pain. And I get it. Who wants to? But if you don't deal with those deeper issues, you're not going to have substantive change in life. So it's feeling my own pain.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's interesting. So you ask a lot of people how to take off weight, and you're going to get a lot of eat right and exercise, but that's a big piece that's really there for everybody, and it's not talked about. That's interesting. Um, I had heard you say one time that EQ was really important for your clients. Um, can you touch on the importance of EQ and like how you can help people tap into why their clients are buying emotionally versus the actual logical reason for the solution that they're solving?
Well, I think that I think there's a big difference between what somebody buys and what somebody pays for. Those are two different
Hmm.
things, right? I saw a great sign a couple of years back. I was driving in Austin. I saw a martial arts studio, and I think it was a karate studio or a dojo or whatnot. And it was talking about all the courses you could take, but the tagline was "Come here, lose weight." Right. So
Hmm.
I just thought that was genius. I mean, the logical side of that is I'm paying for martial arts, but what am I buying? Weight loss, right? What am I buying? Maybe I'm single, and if I feel like I lose some weight and feel more attractive, I can get some more dates, like the emotional side of the purchase. And I think that's often lost. And I think when you get into companies that struggle, they've got the IQ side, they've got the logical reasons why somebody should buy the solution, but they may not have touched into that deeper emotional driver behind the decision, which is the most important driver behind the decision. How's this going to make the buyer look in front of their peers? How are they going to be able to present this at the quarterly ops review? Will this get them promoted? Does this represent a threat to them in any way? There's a whole emotional landscape into purchasing and into the buyer psychology that's really interesting. So you need both. You need a rational solution, and you need to understand the real drivers behind making that decision.
Yeah, and that's crucial information to have, and it feels like in order to get it, you have to be able to ask in a really genuine, "I'm trying to help you" way, not "I'm trying to figure out how to sell you" way.
I'm not even sure you get that. Not early on anyway. I'm not sure somebody would lay down their cards that quickly, if I'm being honest with you. I think you have to figure out what they don't want. So, start off with what is exactly you don't want. You have to film up one end of the conversation. What is it you don't want? Because a lot of people have a hard time telling you what they do want. Let's figure out all the things you do not want. That's the pretty straightforward. And then usually don't have a problem giving that to you. It's relationship. If somebody doesn't know you, they know you for 5 minutes. you have to build an authentic relationship with your target market, real relationships, trust. I think trust is so imperative in doing business, especially at the higher levels of doing business. It's those relationships where you can say, hey, we have an honest conversation. Part of what we do is we also collect anonymous feedback as part of our exercises. So remember, I told you that pitched and scored and given immediate feedback, they can pivot and make edits and changes and whatnot on the spot, like that startup motion. But
Yeah.
also, it's really important that we collect anonymous feedback. So we go to these executives and we say afterwards, okay, off the record, is the sound is not good?
It's a little blurry.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, that's perfect.
Okay, so we also go to them, so we collect anonymous feedback so that we say, hey, look, your name will never be associated with this. What do you really want to tell them? And I tell you, man, we get really great feedback, anonymous feedback for companies and organizations, in addition to the feedback they got inside the room, so to speak.
And you feel like they're willing to open up on those surveys?
Yeah, it's not surveys per se, it's conversations. But yeah, when we go back and we have the conversations with them offline saying, look, your name will never appear. What do you really want to say? There's always additional information that they give us about the solution, the service, the direction and whatnot. And that's the stuff you just wouldn't get if you don't have relationship and trust.
Yeah, that's fair. What advice would you give to somebody who needs to get past the shame that they're failing in order to feel free enough and open enough to ask for help?
Still bad?
There it is.
Okay. Shame is such a tricky one because it's such a minefield. I'm not even sure we're fully aware of ourselves where we have shame. I think we're all a product in some extent of pain and shame. But I think desperation, right? Hey, I have no choice. We can't hide the numbers, right? And I think in today's economy, people, because of the layoffs, people are just more realistic. They're like, you know what? I need to deal with this. I need to reinvent myself. I need to reinvent my division. I need to prove my value with fresh input. Whether that's right or wrong, I just think that's a byproduct of the climate that we're in right now.
Yeah. It seems like a lot of people who succeed in a really big way are people who they don't have a choice but to succeed. They don't really have a backup plan. So I feel like that might apply. It's a bit like it's hard to feel. I mean, you can still feel the shame, but I have to ask for help because I need to
Yeah.
succeed.
Right. I'm a big believer in no plan B. If you
Yeah.
commit or quit, no plan B. Because if you got a plan B, you'll take it, even if it's 1 in 100. That 100 time happens, you will take it. There's no question about that. And I've lived my life that way many a time. It's scary, man. I mean, that's what I'm saying. The emotional toll it can take on you if unless you're surrounded by people who love you and you've got an ecosystem of support and you got other people you're talking to and so forth. It can be a scary place to be. So as counterintuitive as it is, it's important to open up to the right people at the right time, use some wisdom, obviously. But yeah, no, I'm a big believer in the no plan B. Some of the biggest things in life will never happen if you have options. That's not a thing. We worship at the table of options. I want options. Some of the best things in my life have happened because I had no options. In 2012, I had no options. I couldn't sit around feeling sorry for myself. I had to get on with my life. I had to survive. No options. That led to a great run. So a lot of times in life, having no options if used right is a wonderful place to be.
Yeah, it's a blessing in disguise because people will lose the options. They'll get fired. They'll lose a relationship, whatever it might be. And now you're in a spot where I have to make this work. I don't have a choice. And so even if you were in the same exact spot in a different circumstance where you had the plan B, you might back out, but you are now going to find a way that didn't exist previously to make it work.
And you will stretch and you will grow and you will discover aspects about yourself you didn't know existed. You'll find muscles you never knew you even had. But I'm not going to sugarcoat and say it's going to feel great. It may not feel great. It may not feel great for a long time. It may be painful, frustrating. It may trigger fear, doubt, and insecurity. It's a whole journey to it. One of my favorite movies is Jerry Maguire. Have you ever seen it?
I haven't, no.
Jerry Maguire came out about 25, 26 years ago. It's with Tom Cruise. He's a sports agent who has this vision one night at 2 o'clock in the morning. He wants to build a smaller agency and focus more on personal relationships with the clients. He gets fired for it. And it's a whole journey for him about holding a vision, persevering. But it's really about a person's journey for love and identity and finding themselves in the journey. And I think that's one of the biggest gifts we're all given at the end of the day. Who am I? Why am I here? What is my purpose? What is my superpower? And when you go through the pain and you go through the valley of fear, doubt, and insecurity to get to that mountaintop, there's a lot of freedom on the other side. There's a lot of freedom on the other side. But I'm not saying there isn't hell in the hallway. There can be some hell in the hallway. So yes, some of the best things in my life is having no plan B, but it also happened because I had no choice, right? There was no going.
Yeah.
If you didn't finish, it was really bad. If you didn't finish, it was really bad. So you had to finish the journey.
Yeah. And I don't know that you can get there without pain and hell. Like I think that might be a necessary part of that puzzle.
Maybe, yeah. Yeah. I mean, one would think. I mean, you look at some of the people who've done the greatest things in the world. I mean, they're great biographies and they're great movies. Because, yeah, I mean, they had to overcome some serious challenges that cost them
Yeah.
something. And are you willing to pay the price, right? Are you willing to
Yeah.
pay the price? Sometimes you don't even know quite what the price you're paying, but you can't stop. You sort of keep on going. But you will
There's,
discover a lot about yourself. There's a lot of freedom in that. There's a lot of freedom in that. And people talk about light at the end of the tunnel. There's also a lot of light in the tunnel if you look for it. So anyway, I'd highly recommend to go check out the movie Jerry Maguire. It's probably a little dated technology wise, but boy, it's a great story.
yeah. And there's no great movie you're ever gonna watch where the main character doesn't have at least one major pitfall along the way. You need that.
I mean, read the book
Yeah.
Shoe Dog by Phil Knight. I mean, how he built Nike. It's genius. I mean, the first 15 years, he nearly went bankrupt every single year, and they were growing at triple digits. I mean,
Hmm.
like, so it's you want to do great things in life. You want to leave a market. You want to leave a dent in the universe. You want to find yourself. Yeah, you'll pay a price for that because you're also leaving conventional lifestyles, conventional wisdom, and that's painful, man. Even to this day, I do stuff that's off the grid, and I don't have that many people that I can relate to. So there is a sense of like you have to have that sense of like, okay, how do I find being okay with myself in this? Because I may not be able to get that validation from somewhere else or someone else. I may have to go and pass this journey just by myself. And am
It's
I
tough.
okay with it? It can be. It's also incredibly rewarding, but yeah, it's a pressure cooker. But
Yeah.
but you get stronger. The thing is, I don't think life gets easier. I think we get stronger, and I think that's where the resilience comes from.
Confidence is a key piece to succeeding in anything. Do you feel like you've always had that confidence, or can you think of a time where you took a major step up with it? And I'm also curious what helps sustain your confidence for you.
Well, I don't think I'm ever fully confident. I mean, I think like when you are trying to do big things, you're gonna have a lot of fear, doubt, and insecurity. It's like, is your courage bigger than your fear? Right? Do you have more courage in that scenario than you have fear? And sometimes that boils down to 50.1% versus 49.9. But you're like, okay, I'm just going to take a leap of faith and just trust it's all going to work out. And I think that's for me. I'm a person of faith, so I have a relationship with a higher power whom I choose to call God. And so I just choose to say, do I have peace about this? Okay, it may look crazy, it may look insane, but do I still have peace? Okay, something inside of me tells me it's all going to work out. There'll be a solution. Somehow this will all work out. That's what
Mm,
sustains me. It's something greater than myself. And that piece of like, okay, I think I'm on the right path here, even though it looks nuts. I think I'm on the right path. And then you start having a history of those kind of decisions, right? You start having a history of making those type of decisions and operating in that type of environment and being far out there. So there's this is a nature or nurture. I don't know, probably a combination.
so do you think it's fair to say that like building accomplishments along the way and then being able to look back on those and saying, well, I've already done this X, Y, and Z, therefore I have a higher probability of facing this new challenge that I have no answer for in front of me right now?
Oh, sure. I mean, I think that's like going to the gym, right? You lift weights and you start building muscle and you start building strength. And then you said, okay, well, can I make that next bump in weight? Can I lift a little higher? Can I lift a little longer? Sure. Yeah, I think there's some momentum to that. I think confidence is built in pieces. I think confidence is like a puzzle piece. It's built in pieces. It's not just one decision. Although one decision can certainly be pivotal, it can certainly add a lot of confidence. I think it's just a series. There's a thousand small decisions along the way, and they just build up to this cumulative. Whatever comes my way, I can face it. I can. I'll find a way to win. I'll find a way to win.
Yeah. Resilience. And it's also going to touch on discipline as well, because you need to do it now so that tomorrow you can say, I did it, even when you don't want to do it now.
Sure. Yeah, no, 100%. But I'll also tell you another thing, man. As an entrepreneur, and so sometimes the most hardest thing is to do nothing. Sometimes it's to take a big step back and wait because we're such an action-driven society. Do, hustle, 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 hustle. And there's a lot of good in that. There's nothing wrong inherently with it, but there are also times when, like, you know what, you can hustle yourself right out of something. And it's just time to say, you know what, I need to take a quarter to think about this. I'm not, I need to take this big step back and do nothing and let it sit. And sometimes you need to do nothing. Circumstances on the field themselves change, right? Things you have no control over. So you wait a quarter or two and see how the market shapes up. Are you there?
Yeah, we broke up a little bit.
But yeah,
See
you
how the
I
market
think,
shapes up.
yeah, I mean, sometimes you just have to wait. Sometimes the best thing you can do, right? This again, that dumb luck thing, right? You just have to. I'll give you an example. Aristotle and Onassis. Are you familiar with Aristotle and Onassis?
Aristotle, yes.
Yeah, well, Aristotle is the old great Greek philosopher, but Aristotle Onassis was a Greek shipping magnate, he became world famous in 1940s, 50s, and 60s. The guy was like the original big baller, right? He had his own island, he had his own yacht. He married Jackie Kennedy, the former widow of President Kennedy. He had one of the biggest shipping fleets in the world when that was like the quickest, one of the biggest ways to build wealth. Really interesting guy. Well, basically, he tried to do an end run on the oil companies by cutting a deal with the Saudi Arabians directly, and they got kind of ticked and they blackballed him. So, like, they cut him off. They wouldn't use his ships. This is 1956. The guy nearly goes bankrupt because no one's using his ships. No one is locking his contracts with the guy. He's bleeding money. He is bleeding money. They hate his guts. They won't touch him because they view him as a threat. Then all of a sudden, there's the Suez Canal crisis of 1956, where Egypt nationalized the Suez Canal. Britain and France went to war against Egypt. The Suez Canal was shut down. And now all these ships, instead of going through the Suez Canal from the Middle East, has to sail all the way around Africa to get to Europe. Well, who's the only guy who has a shipping fleet available? Aristotle Onassis. The guy was making $2 million a day in the 1950s. That's like $20 million a day or $30 million a day. I don't know how much it is today, but it's a boatload of money. So, like, sometimes life circumstances, right? He didn't plan for that, and he ended up becoming fabulously wealthy because he was the only game in town. Every other ship was taken. He had a whole shipping fleet ready to go, and people were bidding on his. So, as rational as we like to think we are, and as good as we think we are predicting the future, sometimes this dumb luck stuff happens, and you happen to be at the right place at the right time, but you're ready for the opportunity. And I think that's a key important to confidence too. Are you ready when the opportunity comes knocking? Are you ready for it?
I love that. So many people I talk to, successful people like yourselves, I ask how they got there, and every time at some point it comes up, well, I got really lucky. Like I worked hard and I also got lucky. It's like Noah's Ark: prepare, be ready, and then wait for it to come. Yeah, you have to put yourself in the position for success. I heard somebody say that the harder I work, the luckier I am.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, true.
very interesting.
Fair point.
Um, another question that I have for you is, I know it's imperative in business and sales in life to move away from thinking selfishly, making it about you, and moving towards openness, vulnerability, sharing, building those skills. Do you think somebody can turn around from one end of that spectrum to the other? Do you run into that often? Do you help people do that? Um, can you tell me? Well, let's start. Do you think it's possible to turn around from one end of the spectrum to the other?
Okay, help me understand the question one more time. One end of the spectrum,
Sure.
what? Completely closed off person who's very guarded to somebody who's uber vulnerable and super open. Is that what we're talking about? Yeah, I mean,
Exactly.
can lightning strike? Sure. I mean, yeah, but that usually involves some sort of major life crises that drives that type of change. If you've seen, like, in a short amount of time, somebody has a radical transformation. And by the way, Tony, my battery power is dying. This might have to be a last question. So let me start over
Okay.
again. Okay.
Sure.
Look, anyone can change. Theoretically speaking, yes, that is change. There's a crisis. There's a divorce. There's a death. There's an unemployment. There's something that precipitates that type of crisis. But can people make gradual steps? Can people make incremental steps to becoming more open, vulnerable, and real? Absolutely. But I also say this, man. There's a whole vulnerability movement. Vulnerability is a place where you can hide. You can be so vulnerable that you're basically hiding. You're not really growing. You're being so vulnerable that you're not taking responsibility for your life. So I think there's two sides to vulnerability. There's a healthy vulnerability, and then there's a vulnerability where I just spew everything at any time in order to get attention, in order to deflect, in order to not really make change because I'm vulnerable, because I'm out there with the vulnerability kick. So I think there's a balancing act with regards to vulnerability. There's healthy
Fair.
vulnerability, and then there's unhealthy vulnerability. People hide in it.
This will be the last question I ask, but it's one I wanted to ask. I like asking very successful people this question. Do you feel like you are living a fulfilled life, and what do you think the most important aspect to living a fulfilled life would be?
The most important aspect of fulfilled life is inner peace. If you
Mm,
don't have inner peace, it doesn't matter how much money you have, relationships you have, status you have, the toys, the trinkets, even the charity or the benevolence that you give others. Do you have inner peace? You know, have you come to peace with who you are, why you're here, what you're doing, why you're doing it? You know, this a fundamental, comfortable in your own skin, I think, is a critical important to any successful and happy life. And no, I don't think I'm ever fully fulfilled. You know, I'm always a little restless. I'm always grateful, never satisfied, or seldom satisfied. I think those are I think that's the tension that I live in. You know, that I'm very, very grateful. I'm very grateful. The things I still have dreams and hopes, man, that I want to see come. I still see a play, and I don't know how to get there. You know that you living in that tension is this part of the equation. But how do you do so in a place of like gratitude and peace and knowing that I'm more than enough? And those things I have attained, and I'm really, really grateful for. And my wealth is relationships. My wealth is relationships. I have an amazing life filled with amazing people. I've got a great community. You know, people say LA is a lonely town. Not for me. You know, I'm really blessed. I've got a lot of community in LA, of really good people trying working on themselves, doing incredible work on themselves, and wanting to be of service to others. And those are people I enjoy doing life with. So yeah, man, the show continues, my friend, until you cross over. I don't believe in retirement. I don't believe in stopping. Run until you're done. You run until you're done. Maybe I should trademark that. You run until you're done. But
I love
anyway,
it. I'm gonna print the T-shirt.
you booked the t-shirt. Tony, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you, Ruben. I appreciate your time. Thank you for speaking with me.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Hope to do it again. Bye bye.
Oh, is this it? Okay. Yep. You did
Yeah,
great. Good
yeah,
questions.
thanks.
Great, man. I really enjoyed it. So
Appreciate it. Hope we can stay in touch.
look forward to it. Thanks, Tony. Cheers. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.